Hey, okay, we're gonna try this again.
You're back up.
I think I am live. I am live, I think. Hey, um, oh my goodness. Well, let's see. Hang on. Hey, there you guys are. I'm back. I know, I crashed. Our internet crashed. Um, Very crazy. So, I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. All right, I'm back. Not only did the internet crash, but when I went to reach for something, you know, I purposely got the non-spillable glass of wine and it spilled. It went right over, so my keyboard is dripping wine, not too badly, actually, just a little bit. Oh, Roy's going to think that's funny. Mr. Tech Troublemaker. Hey, back, 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 back. Yes, okay. Back again. Ah, my goodness. What a thing. Okay, let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. All right. We'll see how that goes. All right, you guys. Back at it. All right, I'm not going to mess around then since oh gosh. Literally, I had to carry my stand into the sink in the laundry room, the big sink, because there was wine all the way around. Thank goodness I have like an old cutting board that has the edge around it, so the wine all just kind of slopped in there like a trench. It's like a moat, and except that's my grandkid with the moat remote, but my paper, yeah, wine spill. Okay, all right. Take a deep breath. And let's start over. Okay, you guys, we're going at this and it will be fine. It will be fine. We will have our stories and we will have our art. So that's what we're going to go to first. I am going to just kick it off with the art. So here we go. Okay. All right. Oh, that was Larry's from last week. I forgot to take that down. So we're gonna take that and go to the next one. Susan's. And Susan's I forgot to take down too. We're gonna go to Tamara's. Boy, I get it right. There we go. So this is Tamara's, and she had an email for me. I didn't get it written up with what she said. She said, in the email, she said, the black and gold piece. Ooh, that must be, if I remember right, the black and gold piece is, let's close this one down and go to here. The black and gold piece is a swipe on and kiss on clear plastic. Then cut. I found another face, so I used that to add to the image. The other pieces are acrylic on canvas. The swipes I had last week. I was not happy, so I used some 3-ply tissue paper that I'd used years ago to mop up paint. I split it into 2-ply and a fine 1-ply to give it that transparency. Okay, so she's done a lot of stuff. So this is gorgeous. This is really, really pretty. I love it. I'm going to pull this up on top so we know it's hers. Okay. And camera A is there. There in the corner. Yes. Okay. So that's that one. This piece is plastic. Wow. Is a swipe and kiss on clear plastic? Like hard clear plastic? Like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, really does. I agree, Linda. It is so beautiful. Okay, so that's that one. Let's see. We'll go from there. Then she has, this is a swipe, the swipe mirrored that she did with that. Very cool. I like that. And then I'm going backwards. Original 1 of 2. Okay. So too big. See, I just pulled them in, but I didn't adjust the size. Oh, there we go. 1 of 2. So pretty. And then she has 2 of 2. Let me bring her smaller. There it fits. Look at that. I know. She is magical. I agree, Linda. We all kind of think that Tamara's work is pretty magical. Pretty magical. Then there is the originals, 1 and 2. There she has them. Very cool. I like that. And then she did this. The originals flipped and doubled. Tamara, so my applause is not big enough for that, for your work. It's just so gorgeous. So gorgeous. Now I've got to go down here and I've got to get to Julia's email so I can see what she says, because she's coming up next. And thank you, Tamara. Those are all just absolutely stunning. It's just so nice and wonderful to see your work. Yeah, I'm going to. Look at this. These are so cool. I love this. Julia, look at how wonderful this is. Completely different style. Completely different kind, completely different style. But yours and gorgeous. I absolutely love these. This one right here in the what is it, the lower right hand corner with the bit of kind of turquoise greeny blue in the back really is, I just love that. I like that little bit of green blue in it. The other one is gorgeous too because I like the bigger flower and stuff and whatnot, but this one has the little blue green. Being a Northwest girl, I kind of like that kind of stuff. And who wouldn't want to have this as a vase or something to put the flowers in? The gal up the road has been having, I've been stopping and getting bouquets of daffodils for $3 a bouquet. That's what she sells the roadside flowers for. This season flowers. Later on in the season, they're $5 a bunch and they're bigger bouquets. But oh my gosh! But these, I would love to have something that they're just beautiful. So cool. And then she has, this is, hello, Summer. Welcome. We hope you like dogs. This is us, our life, our story, our home. Now, she says, we hope you like dogs because, let me just hide this guy for a sec so you can see why she, oops, not that one. There. That's why we hope you like dogs. He came along for the ride, the picture. Yeah, I love these. These are, I mean, these are the kind of signs that people pay big bucks for. They're beautiful. That beautiful writing, and this one that says, This is us with the wreath above it, and it's like a bouquet above it, and then the sunflowers. Sunflowers are just a thing. And the other one has like almost like that lupin type flower in it. Or what is it? Hyacinth? Maybe hyacinth. I get them all mixed up. They're just gorgeous. I really like that. I just can't decide. Welcome. We hope you like dogs. Subtle, not subtle. Yay! I love it. Where? That's what she gets. There we go. Okay, so for me to show you what I've got, this is going to be a little bit of, okay, not that. You don't want that. And hang on, let me get the right thing up. Again, that's the wrong thing. Here we go. This is what you want to see. Okay, so I'm going to take you to the islands of Washington. And, oh, where's my keyboard? So I can get it so you can see this. Because the first story is a story that fits with, if you live in the Northwest, if you went to school in Washington State as a kid and still do, this is a story that you would hear about something that happened between the Americans and the British, and it's called the Pig War. And took place in 1859 on San Juan Island, which is an island in Puget Sound areas. Kind of on San Juan Island, you take a ferry boat from Anacortes to get to San Juan. And there's also Orcas Island and Shaw Island and Lopez to get to. And then the ferry will go on to Vancouver Island. So it's one of those islands that kind of, you look out across from it and you can actually see the lights from Victoria, Canada on Vancouver Island. So in this time, it had dual occupation because there was some discrepancy as to who it belonged to. So, but it was being jointly managed. But I thought I would give you a little bit of a heads up of what it looks like. So this is the beach at American Camp, which is going to be featured in the book. Now these are JPEGs that I took in 2012 when I went up to do a job for my friend Trudy Shirting, shortly after Joe had passed, and she had an Airbnb up there, and she needed photos for it. So these have not really been retouched or done. Some of them are way overexposed. Some of them are not. Their JPEGs are not real great. Anyway. So this is the beach at American Camp, and you turn around right from where I am and you look back up and you would see this hill. I've camped up on that hill with my sister-in-law, Jeannie, years and years ago, probably back in 1979. We camped in her Volkswagen van, and we had eagles chasing her Irish setter, because all along that area up there is covered with rabbits all over the place, and the eagles just love it. But this is the area called American Camp, and It was where the Americans had their station and whatnot. There's some bunkers up in here and whatnot. There is, and then this is one of the beaches that looks out. And as you look out across there, you're looking out toward Canada. Those mountains in the back, there's an island, and then there's some mountains kind of way in the back. That's looking north toward Canada. So this is from up on the hill where I showed, and it looks down into this bay, and this is part of where this conflict almost took place, and where the Americans set up their ship and cannon. But you can go out there; it's quite beautiful, and wander around. There is what was an old lighthouse and was an old station that is around. It's kind of fun to cruise around. I did a black and white of it years ago. But take a look at this. So you'll see that there's out there in the water, you'll see white things on the rocks, because this is saltwater tidal area going up and down and up and down. And the rocks there to the small rocks that are just kind of between the land I'm on and the next island over, are covered in sea lions. You can't see them, but the other one that's jetting out to the right, you can kind of see them. I don't know if you can get it. Yeah, so you can see the sea lions there, maybe a little bit. On that one, laying those shiny guys, and they're out here too, but you can see them better on this one. All those shiny things and lumps are big sea lions, but those rocks get covered up pretty easily in the tide. So there's a bunch more sea lions, and there's rocks like this and little islands like this all over this. Puget Sound up in this area is hundreds of islands all over the place. Some tiny, some populated, some private, but islands that people live on, and the beach. Now this looks out, you can see there's a ship out there. There's some other islands. This is looking practically due west out, and there's a ship, and then you see across to that other area over where it looks like there's to the right. That is I think that's quite one of the delineations on that might be another island, or that might be on Vancouver Island. I'm not sure if we're that close or not. But anyway, those hills are up in Canada, but I'm standing on San Juan Island. Big ships come through here a lot because that's looking straight out to the Pacific. I mean, really, next stop, Hawaii, maybe, or Korea. Who knows? But I wanted to give you a sense of what this was like. So we're talking in 1859, this would have been happening. And there were bays like this all over the place. And then this is part of an old cemetery that is up where British camp was, the English camp. And the English camp was a lot more developed, and more. They had fancier houses and whatnot, stuff like that. And this is a madrona tree up there, and this is the mausoleum at Roche Harbor up there. There was a family that had built some things up there, and this was their family mausoleum. There's a whole stories behind it. It's actually really beautiful. It's the story about who it was in the family, and the pillars. There's a broken pillar for one of the people that was gone, and it's this beautiful piece of architecture out in the middle of the woods and an old cemetery all around. I've been going up here since I was small. Because we used to go to Roche Harbor via boat, because it was one of the places that had a gas dock when we were going to Canada, or when we would go camping in the U.S. San Juans, as a boat camping as a kid. I did that a lot. And this, though, is kind of a leftover from British camp and then went on to be expanded. This is part of the Hotel de Haro. The Hotel de Haro was a place that Teddy Roosevelt stayed at. It was an amazing, it still is an amazing, beautiful hotel. It's on the west side of San Juan Island. It has a marina that's absolutely, there was a Roche Harbor Lime and Cement Company had established a place there. That's the family that had the mausoleum and were quite wealthy in the Lime Kiln Cafe, Lime Kiln Point. I have another photograph someplace from the lighthouse there. And it's all this beautiful area. It has beautiful English gardens and these stairs that go up to other gardens and go up to the mausoleum. If you go up those stairs in the background and walk through the woods, you'll go through the old cemetery and end up at the mausoleum. But it's on an island that is only accessible unless you're seaplane or you can. There's a small airstrip, a small boat airplane, or by ferry. This is the walkway underneath out to the docks where the boat harbor is. Here's like the English Gardens. It's an absolutely incredible place. This is the view out from up on the hill, up above those stairs, down to, at sunset, to the Roche Harbor Marina. This is a place that I used to come into as a kid via boat. I very rarely ever came via ferry because we were always had our boat and we were put in and go out places like that and go out camping out to some of the islands out there. And this is very popular in the summer. There's giant yachts there, and it's a popular place because it's a very deep harbor. This was where English camp was, up out in this area. So you see how it's a lot different than what the American camp was like. This is from the deck of, I'm leaving San Juan Island now. I've gone across from Roche Harbor. I'm gone across to the little town of San Juan, and we were leaving. So I'm on the deck of the ferry, and it's heading out. Got to cut through a little passage, but I'm going to turn around and look back at. This is the little town of San Juan, and it had, you can get whale watches. This is where I did my koi pictures. There's a cool artist co-op there. It's a great little art town. My nephew used to manage a hotel here in this town. It's beautiful. It's got its own marina. It's Friday Harbor. That's the name of the town on San Juan Island. And this is the ferry dock. So if you live on San Juan Island, the only way you have, unless you fly, is to go via ferry. And it's a very, you have to get reservations now if you're a tourist who want to travel there. But even locals have to sometimes get reservations because it's very popular. It's kind of expensive too, but it's still a very cool little town. But then as you leave, you're going to be going on a ferry, and you can imagine what it was like for them in their ships coming through these areas. That there, in 1859, there were not these markers on these rocks to show where they were, and this is to show the channel markers that they have up there. And heading out, because I think we're going to come, what you see, the little buildings right there, that looks like, yeah, that's the ferry dock on Lopez. That's the ferry dock on Lopez Island. That's got a steep hill when you get off. It's to go ride your bike on. I've ridden my bike there. Orcas Island is the largest one that it goes to. San Juan is next, then Lopez. Shaw is very small. The ferry does pull in there, but it has really no commercial aspects to it. It's more the kids that that live on Shaw actually go to school in either on Lopez or on San Juan. The kids all catch the ferry to go to school. And there's the ferry at sunset. That's what you would ride. Your cars are on those. Coming that's a Washington State ferry that will go between Anacortes, Washington, and Victoria, British Columbia, and go through these channels. I think that's the little ferry dock on Shaw. But there you go. That's it. I wanted to give you a setting for the stories that one of the stories that I'm going to read. So it just, I really wanted, I thought, how can I get them to understand what this was like for these folks and what it is? And I mean, it's an amazing area. It's beautiful. It's, but I mean, I know what it's like to have gone through there on a boat when the fog is hit and you couldn't see the island. And we were coming back one time from Victoria, and we crossed the Straits of Georgia, and we were in it was later on. Dad had a larger boat. I think it was it might have been his last boat, which was a 37-foot tri-cabin. But we did it. I crossed in as small as a 21-footer. Not across the straits, but through the islands. Went through the islands, and we went up in an 18-footer a ski boat one time, but just to some local close ones, but not when the weather was good. But we came across through that area, and Bob and I, with Mom and Dad, and the fog rolled in, and it was a wall of fog that we literally were cruising along, and Dad was keeping us outside the fog, the wall of fog, because it was like a giant wall, and you couldn't see into it. We could see ahead of us where kind of which way we were going, and he was rerouting us, and he had all the things in his charts, and Dad was very good with this stuff. But you saw those shipping, the big ships. Those ships are coming through on the shipping lanes, whether it's foggy or not, whether it's crazy or not, and you've got to listen for them. And I just can't imagine what it was like for those folks back then to have been the people who settled there, but also the people who were in the military that were on the ships and whatnot. So anyway, I'm glad you liked it. So it's going to take us to... where did I go? I want to get the book ready for you guys. Here we go. This one. So the book I'm going to read first is this one. It's called The Pig War: How a Porcine Tragedy Taught England and America to Share. Now, this is the story that every kid in Washington State learns about. It's kind of our one claim to fame in the battle for independence and statehood and all that kind of who gets what territory. Because it's kind of funny, because if you look at where the division is of the United States, it's the 49th parallel, I believe it is, isn't it? That's the border between the U.S. and Canada, except for one little part that they kind of cut in and around, and that's Vancouver Island got it, but then we got, so they were given, Canada got all of Vancouver Island, otherwise it would have split off the whole southern tip. But then there's a little part called Blaine that we have, that you actually, if you're in the U.S., in Washington State, you have to go into Canada to come back into Blaine, which is part of the U.S. You have to go to Canada and come back in. It's kind of crazy. Yes. The Pig War: How a Porcine tragedy taught England and America to share. Now let's see if I can get this camera to work so that I can maybe, oopsie, that's way too big. Let's see if I can unzoom it. There we go. And back it up. There we go. Okay, now I can read the book and still kind of see you guys, sort of, or you can kind of see me. All right, The Pig War by Emma Bland Smith. It's illustrated by Allison J. She has done a fair number. I'll show you some of her books if we have a chance afterwards. She's quite talented, done a fair number of things. This is a true tale about two mighty nations, an ill-fated pig, and a most unusual war. It is also the story about sharing. The date, June 15th, 1859. The setting, a small but lovely island called San Juan, off the green coast of today's Pacific Northwest. Was the island American? Was it British? That depended on who you asked. The cast of characters, a few dozen men who had gotten along okay for the most part for some years. What were they doing there? Well, the Brits were raising sheep for a powerful British corporation called the Hudson Bay Company. The Americans? Most of them were former miners looking for a bit of land to settle on. The mood? About to change for the worse. On this spring day, an American settler named Lyman Cutler looked out his window and spied a large pig rooting in his potato patch. The pig was British, or at least its owner was. Now, the Brits and the Yanks were on fairly good terms. True, they fought a terrible war, America's War of Independence, nearly a century before. And then about 30 years later, they clashed again in the War of 1812. But since then, things had calmed down. They were, if not exactly friends, they were at least polite rivals in the exploration and settlement of the West. But still, tempers can flare, and on this fateful morning, Lyman's did. Maybe Lyman hadn't had his coffee. Maybe he'd slept poorly. Maybe he was looking forward to boiling those potatoes for his supper. Maybe he was thinking of the many painful miles he'd rode to buy the potato seed. But for whatever reason, when he saw the pig, he got cranky. He acted without thinking, and the pig paid the ultimate price. Poor pig. Instantly, Lyman regretted his rashness. He hurried to the pig's owner, Charles Griffin, and offered to pay for the animal. A gleam in his eye, Charles asked Lyman for $100, and all would be forgiven. Simple, right? Not quite. $100 was an outrageous sum at the time. For that kind of money, a person could buy a nice plot of land. A farm laborer earned only about $200 per year. Lyman refused to pay. "There's a better chance for lightning to strike you than for you to get $100 for that hog," he said. Charles was affronted. "You Americans are a nuisance on the island," he bellowed. In Charles' eyes, the island was British. "I consider it American soil," retorted Lyman. Well, that was too much for Charles. By this time, he was more than a little cranky himself. He told an official who threatened to have Lyman arrested and all his fellow Americans evicted from the island. The same day, Charles sat down and wrote to his boss, James Douglas, the governor of the Crown Colonies of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. That should do it, he figured. But those Yanks, they knew their way around a fountain pen, too. They wrote a letter to General William Harney, the American military commander, and signed it. All 18 of them. Now, the two bosses, Harney and Douglas, may or may not have been cranky. We don't know. But we do know that they were both, it must be said, on the hot-headed side. Harney promptly dispatched a company of 64 men under the command of Captain George Pickett. The Americans must have sighed a breath of relief. Such a fearsome display of power would surely make the Brits back off. Simple? Right. Right? Not quite. Because just 2 days later, a British ship, highly armed, commanded by Captain Geoffrey Hornby, and loaded with several hundred men, steamed into the bay. Oh dear. What started as a pig incident and turned into a pig argument was fast escalating into a pig situation. Pickett was nervous. Well, who wouldn't be? He was also, like his boss, a bit of a hothead. He asked for reinforcements, and hundreds more American troops joined Pickett's forces on the island. Hornby, though less of a hothead than his boss, the governor, likely felt a tad nervous himself at this point. 2 more British ships steamed in. Soon the bay and the golden hills overlooking it teemed with British and American ships and soldiers, all on alert. From shore, building a fort for the cannons, the Americans recalled the last 2 wars they'd fought with Britain. So many young men killed, so many children orphaned. Did they want to suffer that tragedy again? And from their ships aiming their own cannons, they had 64 in all, the British pondered their tentative relationship with the United States. Did they want to reignite the hostile attitudes of the past? Both sides waited, anxious, wondering if a scuffle over a pig had gotten just a tad out of hand. The pig war was about to begin. Tense days passed. The British Captain Hornby, taking a risk, ignored the governor's orders to land Marines on shore. Brave fellow. Then, unsure what to do next, Hornby waited for his superior, Rear Admiral R. Lambert Baines. Another good move. Baines was even less trigger-happy than Hornby. When he arrived and heard about the situation, he exclaimed, or so they say, "Tut, tut, no, no." Then he ordered his troops to sit tight and added in so many words, "Hold your fire." Phew. Now, on the American side, Lieutenant Colonel Silas Casey took over from Pickett. He, too, was admirably lacking in hot-headedness. He rowed out to one of the British ships and tried to talk things through, but still, neither side would back down. By this time, the government bigwigs had heard about what was happening. A squabble over a pig in a potato patch was about to plunge the 2 nations into war? President James Buchanan, far off in Washington, D.C., was alarmed. So were the British officials. Buchanan sent a message. "Don't shoot unless they fire first," was the order, but in much fancier language. And with the approval of the Brits, the president dispatched a proven negotiator. Hastily, or as hastily as possible for a time when it took 6 weeks to cross the country, General Whitfield Scott arrived to help the 2 sides work things out. General Scott, it will not be disputed, was the least hot-headed of the whole gang. He worked his magic. Maybe the soldiers missed their families. Maybe both sides had cooled off. Maybe General Scott was a persuasive speaker. Maybe all of the above. For whatever reason, the men put down their weapons and the islanders agreed to share. Joint occupation, the officials called it. Following the agreement, most of the soldiers left. All but one of the warships sailed back out of the harbor. No more than 100 men on each side were allowed to remain. None of the artillery guns were ever fired, except one. On a landmark day in November 1859, as General Scott prepared to leave after negotiating for peace, the Americans gave him a one-gun salute. Well deserved. And now it was time to share. Simple, right? Actually, this time, quite right. The residents established two bases, American Camp and English Camp. Together they improved the island. They fixed the roads. They set up a bi-national patrol to keep order. They even attended each other's holidays. Every summer, the Americans celebrated the 4th of July and invited the British. And every May 24th, the British threw a birthday bash for their queen, Victoria. And the Americans always joined in. The raucous games included horse racing, blindfold wheelbarrow races, and balancing on greased poles off the end of a ship. They knew how to have fun. Did Lyman practice in these good times? Probably. He was known as a fun-loving guy. Did he feel just a teensy bit embarrassed about all the fuss he'd caused? Let's hope so, for goodness sake. Today, San Juan is part of the United States. English Camp and American Camp are still there, flags waving a reminder of the past. The island, it is true, is small, but what happened there was a very, very big. Two countries worked hard to share, to look past their differences and to get along. They did all that, and no one got hurt, except the pig. And there's some things with the author's note and the camp. And it shows the houses. English Camp was on the northern end of San Juan, and American Camp was on the other side. Show you this one picture back here I was going to mention. Bit of a map. San Juan Island, Roche Harbor is up here. You see that, Roche? Griffin Bay is where they are. Shaw Island here, Orcas, Lopez, and this is where they had all that. American Camp was, this is where English Camp was eventually settled, and American Camp is down this whole end down here. That lighthouse I showed you is probably right in here. This is that skinny passage between the two islands. There's quite a skinny passage. But you oftentimes see the orcas frolicking around out there. It's not surprising. Not at all. Anyway, that's that one. Woohoo! Okay, I have another story, and I know it's getting late. This one though, but this is the second part of the other one. With what are you guys thinking here? Pigs. This is, I said tonight, was make way for ducks and pigs. For Easter, you gotta have little ducklings. Didn't have bunnies, had pigs instead. This is Mr. McCloskey's Marvelous Mallard, and this is another story by Emma Bland. Emma Bland Smith. This is illustrated by Becca Statlander, and we'll see how it goes. If you have to go, sorry about that, but I'm going to read a second book. And I know I showed a lot of art, and that's the way. Quack, 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 quack. You can't draw ducks unless you live with them. Robert McCloskey. Now, Robert McCloskey stood back and studied his sketches. He shook his head. These ducks are not right, he thought. This wasn't how a duck waddled or fell on her behind or flapped his wings. He paced around his New York studio. I might have read this to you once before, so if you've heard it, I'll catch you next time. How did he get himself into this duck drawing mess anyway? It had started 4 years before when he was in art school in Boston, walking to and from classes. He laughed at the funny mallard ducks in the park. He fed them peanuts and watched as they splashed and dove in the lake. Once he ran into a whole family on the sidewalk waddling into the public garden in a long, orderly row. I love the artwork in this. Mr. McCloskey finished art school and ended up in New York City. A few years later, he returned to Boston for a visit. He completed his first children's book and was wondering what to write about next. Again, he saw those funny mallards. He remembered the family of ducks that he'd seen on the sidewalk, and he smiled and his eyes sparkled. And there it was, his story. A pair of mallard ducks looking for a safe place to raise their ducklings in a busy city. Bingo! It had taken him quite a while to get the words on paper. Then when he finally had a rough story, it was time to draw the illustrations to go with the words. And that's how he found himself today, scratching his head, searching his memory to picturing those ducks, trying his darndest to draw them. It was, let's just say, harder than he expected. Oh, I love that they have his pages, his scratch pages of what he tried. He brought the sketches to his editor. She was not impressed. He did not blame her. I can do better, he thought. I have to do better. I need to see actual ducks. And he decided, and he went uptown to the Science Museum. For days, Mr. McCloskey studied the stuffed ducks at the museum, and he looked at them from the right and from the left, and he gathered more scientific information about ducks than he knew what to do with, and he sketched and erased and started from scratch. But when he stood back and looked at the sketches, he frowned. These ducks were just okay, and just okay wasn't good enough. His editor would never accept these drawings. I can do better, he thought. I have to do better. And what else would help? Live models. That was it. And he came home with a box full of tiny ducklings, very alive and very loud. And for the next few months, the ducklings lived with Mr. McCloskey in his studio. It wasn't easy using them as models. They did not cooperate. They wouldn't stay still, and they clumped together instead of walking in a row. And what's more, they made a terrible mess. And they woke everyone at dawn with their infernal quacking. Mr. McCloskey's roommate was not amused. But Mr. McCloskey was determined. He crawled around, studied the ducklings. He sketched them waddling and running and plopping down and jumping up. And he crawled around after them so much his knees just gave out on him. His sketches were getting there, but they still weren't good enough. Not for his editor, and not for him. Even the ducks didn't seem to think much of them. Quack! I can do better, he thought. I have to do better. He was willing to do whatever it took to make these drawings perfect, so he thought a bit, and then he did what any reasonable person would do. He went out and bought more ducks. Grown ones this time. He focused his mind. It was time to tackle the hardest illustrations of all, flying. How on earth was he going to draw an airborne mallard? The weeks passed by. Mr. McCloskey drew and drew and drew and drew, and he worked on the writing too, cutting words and letting the drawings tell the action. He was almost there, and time was almost up because the ducks had simply become impossible. They hogged the bathtub, splashed something awful, and caused leaks in the ceiling underneath. It wasn't really their fault. Being cooped up in the studio was no life for a duck. They needed to go. So Mr. McCloskey drove the ducks out to a friend's place in the country. There they could make all the mess they wanted and quack as early as they'd liked. And it was just the right place for a flock of noisy ducks. He said goodbye. They quacked back at him In his studio again, he went over the manuscript, holding his breath. He turned the last page and grinned. The drawings were better than just okay. They were better than getting there. They were absolutely top-notch. The work hadn't been easy. It hadn't always been fun either, but it was the greatest thing he'd ever done. He felt sure the ducks would have approved too. And although he was a normally calm sort of fellow, Mr. McCluskey grabbed his drawings and practically flew down to uptown to show them to his editor. And this time, she was extremely impressed. But what about children? They were the toughest judge of all, the ones who really mattered. When the book came out, Make Way for Ducklings was a hit. All it took was 6 years, buckets of patience, good supply of erasers, and a studio full of spirited ducks. Oh my goodness. Jane McCloskey says, I'm grateful to Emma for bringing my father to life in this book. Like the Mallards, our family ended up on an island, and it was there that my father painted the illustrations for most of his books. In his studio, he did hundreds of sketches of my sister Sal and me, playing, crawling around, sitting, and doing art of our own. Sal and I were both in One Morning in Maine, and in some crowd scenes in Homer Price and Centerburg Tales, and Sal, of course, in Blueberries for Sal. We learned to sit still when he painted our portraits. I learned to keep still in a way that I never realized was unusual until years ago when my dentist kept exclaiming that what a great patient I was. I also learned patience and high standards from my father. And from both him and my mother, I learned to appreciate tolerance, decency, and oh yeah, good food. Neither my sister nor I, unfortunately, inherited my father's artistic abilities, though Sal's daughter, Samantha, carries that gene. Ah, very cool. Look at that. His illustrations. I think I've read this to you guys, but there is, in 1985, Boston Park officials commissioned sculptor Nancy Schoen to create larger-than-life statues of the avian creatures from Make Way for Ducklings. The statues were installed in the city's public gardens, where the story concludes. Although McCluskey was initially skeptical of the project, he was immediately won over when he witnessed a child climb onto one of the ducks. Children are invited to interact with the statues and bring the story to life. Today, Bostonians regularly dress up the statues for holidays and to reflect current events. I love that. I love that. Oh my. My ducks to the farm, they were a delight to watch. I have a lorikeet couple that come and have a drink and bathe in the bird baths. They chatter together so much it makes me chuckle. They get in the water together. Lorikeets are so cool. They have a lorikeet exhibit at the Point Defiant Zoo, which is in Tacoma. And I remember taking Layla there as a little girl and being able to have the food to feed them and the lorikeets landing all over us. It's just so much fun. 6 years. 6 years, I know. I'm glad you guys like the books. We survived the crash of the internet here at the house. That doesn't happen very often, but thanks for coming back and sticking around. Poor Roy. Tech Trouble was here. Tech Troublemaker, my buddy from Ecam, stopping in. He would probably he would probably give me a bad time about using my Wi-Fi rather than hardwired into the Ethernet, but I don't have anything Ethernetted here. And I have a booster and I have everything. So, how often has that happened? It's happened, I can count it on one hand how often that my internet has crashed in the middle of things. Now, if you want to talk about how many times I've completely crashed and burned, that's a whole nother story. But maybe we can bring those up at the 500th show. So, 2 weeks from tonight will be show 500. Yeah, tonight's 496, 497, 498. Yep. 2 weeks from tonight. Show 500. On not next Sunday, but the Sunday after. Oh my gosh. Send in what books you think I should read. If you have one that I haven't read and it's a favorite of yours, Tamara, you might have an Australian book that you know of and that I can maybe get a hold of. Anyway, send it to me, whether it's Skippy John Jones or underwear or Mean Old Mean Hyena or Wombat Stew. Oh, who knows what. If you think of something that you want me to read and revisit, or you have something new for me to read, throw it my way. Send me an email so I can give me tough time to find the book at the library or in Kindle or someplace like that, so that I can throw it up on computer, and we will see. All right, you guys. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna go re-pour my glass of wine. I think I deserve it. Oh, what a day. Okay, April starts tomorrow. I'm going to be doing Abstract April for my art. I'm going to post my little short videos of how I made some of my abstract stuff that is in my book. That's kind of abstract. And then I've been watching somebody that did some abstract stuff and a practice. So I'm going to try that. And tomorrow I got my speakers, because my Mac Studio doesn't have speakers. So I just got speakers. I'm going to open them tomorrow. Do a live. Not doing it tonight because, well, I don't want to push fate that hard. She's already looking at me like I'm stepping on her toes. So, guys, thank you so much for being here to kick off my week in such a wonderful way. I appreciate you all so much. And it is, so spread the word about the 500th show. That will be on, let me see if I can figure out what day it's going to be on. That will be on the 14th, April 14th. So that's show 500. So spread your news around. If you're doing a live or something like that, invite people to come on April 14th to this. Let them know. Tell your friends, share it out. I'll put a post, I think, in the community post and let you know, and you can share that out. But yeah, it'd be fun to have all the bucket fillers be here and share some books that are some of your favorites. All right, you guys, have an amazing week. Do something creative. Step outside the box a little bit. If you don't like it, set it aside, come back to it, scribble over it, and see what it looks like. Maybe something happens. Tear it up, make it into a collage. See what happens. And until next time, keep looking for the beauty hidden in plain sight. It's all around you. But the first place you'll find it, I know, is when you go look in the mirror. And I'll see you on Thursday. Let's see. Let's go to there.
In the heat of the night, we could get lost in all the lights and sounds. Feeling alright, we won't go home, we will just stay here downtown. There's not just stars on the boulevard, We could be shameless, famous, running cool, with a love that leaves us weightless. Ooh, drop dead gorgeous, wow. Ooh, you got me feeling starstruck too. We could be famous. You want to be famous with me. We could be famous. Come and be famous. You blow my mind, looking like a model, better than the usual. Yeah, you don't even try, not average or typical. I put you on a pedestal.